Welcome in to the Rock Talk Studio, the podcast that turns you on to new rock and roll books and documentaries. My name's Big Rick. I do the watching here, I do the reading, and I gladly do all the digging so you don't have to waste your time or money when it comes to looking for a great new rock and roll book or documentary to check out. And today we're going to be taking a look at a book and a documentary from the Rolling Stones and Black Sabbath. Two new projects from two legendary bands, Stones and Sabbath, and both are a little unusual and both are a little small. So I wanted to do a combination show today, and they're definitely not your average rock and roll book or documentary. It's something a little bit different, but something that I want to turn you on to. Let's start with the Rolling Stones book. It's a new book, and it's called Is Everybody Ready for the Next Band? The Rolling Stones 1969 U.S. Tour. And it's written by Richard Houghton. And this is a quirky little oral history type of book. It runs about 173 pages that looks at a huge turning point in the career of the Stones. The story picks up right after Brian Jones leaves the band and then tragically dies not long after. Mick Taylor steps in as his replacement, and the Stones head out on what would become one of the most talked about tours of their career, and that was the 1969 tour of the United States. But what makes this one a little bit different from most oral histories is who's telling the story. Instead of band members and crew or journalists, the book collects accounts from people who were actually at the shows. They actually went to the concerts in '69. So the subject matter is based around these different experiences of the same thing. And that is these 24 tour dates of the '69 tour. There are more than 100 previously unreleased published memories in this book, and they read like you and your buddy going to the show, or you or your girlfriend or boyfriend heading out to the show to see the Stones. There's different people, different cities, but all experiencing the same moment across these tour dates. And what makes this tour so compelling is the moment it captures in the Stones' evolution. So we're talking Stones' first tour in 3 years, and before this, they were still playing shorter, like 30-minute sets with a lot of screaming girls in the audience. So by 1969, the show has grown into a full 75-minute rock spectacular, and it's built around songs from Beggar's Banquet and Let It Bleed. So material is a lot different, a lot grittier, and this is with, complete lighting, complete stage theatrics, and the audience has really never seen anything like this before. It's crazy back then. They usually did 2 shows a night. And in here, there's stories about the second show not starting until 2 o'clock in the morning and had the Stones finishing up around 5 a.m. because there was 3 opening acts before they even came on stage. And the opening acts, I wanted to mention that, weren't exactly small names either. You had Terry Reid and then B.B. King and then Ike and Tina Turner. Now, the stories can get a little repetitive here at times. A lot of experiences overlap, but what the book does really well is it drops you back into this moment when rock concerts were starting to evolve into kind of a large-scale thing that they became and that they are now. So you're sitting there on the cusp of what was happening, and it's kind of cool to experience that through these stories. This tour also connects some major moments in rock and roll history. At the end of the tour, they did the famous Altamont concert. That was the final run of the tour. That gets covered here. First-hand accounts of people who were actually at the show. So it's interesting to see different observations of that and what was going on the ground there at that show. And on a brighter side, the legendary live album, Get Your Yayas Out, which is considered probably one of the greatest rock and roll live records of all time, that came out of this tour. So there are some very interesting touch points in rock and roll history here. The book includes a few pages of photos, and it definitely has a bit of the self-published feel to it. Some pages only have a few words on them. So this isn't a deep analytical dive into the Stones or this tour. It's really more a collection of personal reflections on a key moment in rock history. And for that reason alone, it's a pretty unique read. Is everybody ready for the next band? The Rolling Stones 1969 U.S. Tour by Richard Houghton. Okay, the next one I have for you is a documentary. Let's talk some Black Sabbath Let's talk a documentary about Toni Iommi. If you've been listening to the show for a while, thank you. And you know that I like to turn you on to different things. If it's your first time in, also thank you. Hope you're enjoying it. But I like to turn you on to other things in rock and roll world. So newsletters, podcasts, websites, whatever it may be that I feel is going to add value to you. And I want to tell you a little bit about a new podcast I was checking out. It's called Gig Gab, and it's labeled as the show for working musicians. It's a fascinating and entertaining look at behind the scenes of what it takes to put a live band on stage. It's hosted by Dave Hamilton, and Dave discusses everything from booking gigs, getting paid, and working with the crowd, prepping bands, learning the material, and managing all the different personalities involved. And while the show is said to be for musicians, a surprisingly sizable chunk of their audience are music fans who just love hearing about how the sausage is made. So if you're into the fan of live music, playing it or watching it be played, which I know that you are, be sure to check out Gig Gab. You can find it at giggabpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts, like wherever you're listening today. Check them out, Gig Gab. Toni Iommi, the Godfather of heavy metal, is the title of this new documentary, and it's actually part one. It just came out. It's a documentary series from Gibson TV that takes a look at the life of the Black Sabbath guitarist. It traces his story from the infamous factory accident that nearly ended his playing career, and it's crazy how that accident where he cut off the end of two of his fingers actually happened on the last day at work at the factory, and he talks about that in this documentary. And it's nuts how the doctors told him that he could never play guitar ever again. So he decided to make his own tips of his fingers to get past the injury. I know the story's been told before, but to hear him tell it again and to hear him talk about the different iterations of how he made these tips of his fingers was just really cool to see. A lot of early pictures and footage are used here. It was interesting that they showed the environment where he grew up. It really gave a sense of how it dictated the heaviness of his music. It was very industrial, very war-torn. The skies were full of smoke. You can see how this would be a breeding ground for Iommi's sound and for Black Sabbath. The series is streaming on YouTube, and it features new interviews from Toni, and along with a bunch of other heavyweights reflecting on his music and his influence. You've got Brian May of Queen, Slash from Guns N' Roses is in this one, Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine. He always tells great stories. Zakk Wylde, Scott Ian from Anthrax, and Youngblood, who is really good at summarizing how the blues played a part here. He talks about how the blues had many branches, and one of them turned into metal music, which was started by Black Sabbath. A lot of these musicians are paying respects to how Toni was the originator of this music. Tom Morello says that Toni is the greatest riff writer of all time. But it's not just a biography, though. The series also puts Black Sabbath into a broader kind of musical content, showing how Iommi's blues-based riffs and his use of space kind of help push rock music into a heavier, moodier territory. There's a part in here where Toni says, I was making heavy rock, not heavy metal, but that moniker just stuck with him. And those ideas just didn't shape Sabbath. They helped lay the groundwork for decades of guitar music that followed. And it was really cool to see all these guys paying respect to Toni and getting a view of how important he is and has been. Now, here's the rub with this one, though. It is being billed as part one, but there's been no release of part two. It's been a couple of months since this has been out. And I reached out to Gibson TV to try to get some information from them. And I guess they just haven't realized or heard about the mighty Rock Talk studio. And I didn't get a reply. Additional episodes of Toni Iommi, the Godfather of heavy metal, are expected to roll out through 2026 on this Gibson TV. So I'm going to keep looking out for these different chapters of this career. I really hope they do a couple more chapters because it's really well done. And I encourage you to check this out. I will definitely keep my eye out for the rest of this series. And hopefully more about Toni Iommi in episode 2. tuning in, everybody. Love talking rock and roll with you, especially when I get to talk about some Rolling Stones and Black Sabbath and Toni Iommi, one of my favorite guitar players. All right, let's tear it down for this week. Pack it up and head on down the road. I'll catch you next time in the Rock Talk studio.